Namaste, and welcome to our continuing series, Essays on the Gita, with our beloved Ranga. We are in the chapter Sankhya, Yoga, and Vedanta, and the line starts, but apart from the distinction between the Sankhya way.
So we'll read the whole para first. But apart from the distinction between the Sankhya way of knowledge and the Yoga way of works, there was another and similar opposition in the Vedanta itself. And this also the Gita has to deal with, to correct and to fuse into its large restatement of the Aryan spiritual culture. This was the distinction between Karma Kanda and Jnana Kanda, between the original thought that led to the philosophy of the Purva Mimamsa, the Vedavada, and that which led to the philosophy of the Uttara Mimamsa, the Brahmavada, between those who dwelt in the tradition of the Vedic hymns and the Vedic sacrifice, and those who put these aside as a lower knowledge and laid stress on the lofty metaphysical knowledge which emerges from the Upanishads. For the practical mind of the Vedavadins, the Aryan religion of the rishis meant the strict performance of the Vedic sacrifices and the use of the sacred Vedic mantras in order to possess all human desires in this world, wealth, progeny, victory, every kind of good fortune, and the joys of immortality in paradise beyond. For the idealism of the Brahmavadins, this was only a preliminary preparation, and the real object of man, the true purushartha, began with his turning to the knowledge of the Brahman, which would give him the true immortality of an ineffable spiritual bliss far beyond the lower joys of this world or of any inferior heaven. Whatever may have been the true and original sense of the Veda, this was the distinction which had long established itself and with which, therefore, the Gita has to deal. So, we are going to a little bit of Indian philosophy. Okay, there is the Mimamsa philosophy, and the Mimamsa philosophy was laying a lot of stress on the Vedas, and the Vedic mantras are used for yoga. They are used for yoga, but they are used in two different ways. Okay, that's what the difference between the Karma Kanda and the Jnana Kanda. So, the Karma Kanda is the one in which you use the mantras of the Veda for achieving things in the physical world. Okay, yeah. There, as he says, you want children, you want wealth, you want prosperity, and after the end of your life, you want a place in the spiritual planes of consciousness permanently. Okay, so that's the entire idea. So for that, they do the sacrifice, physical sacrifice. They light a fire and go on chanting the mantras and putting ghee and fuel into the twigs and branches and all sorts of sacred grasses and all that they put in by reciting the mantras. So this was the Karma Kanda. But the Gita doesn't like this mechanical thing and does not want prosperity and only prosperity and progeny and wealth and everything in the physical world. Then it lays stress on the Jnana Kanda. The Vedas are used for their knowledge aspect and not for their power aspect to get things in the physical world. That's the difference between Karma Kanda and Jnana Kanda. And this was a big difference also. And the Upanishads, the Vedanta, is laying stress on the knowledge aspect and not the mechanical sacrifice aspect. Now the question arises, is it true that with the mantras you can get things in the physical world in this manner? That's a question that arises. But these mantras have sound value, and if they are pronounced correctly and in the right way, yes, they can give you results in the physical world. It's known. And we know that also because Mother also did that once. There was a period of great, what is it called? Dryness, no rain. What is it called? There's a word for it. Drought, yeah. There was a period of about 4 or 5 years of drought, and Mother made the children walk and go on reciting, rain, 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 we want the rain. So, this is a mantric effect because Mother has given the words and she made them walk on the symbol of water. So, it was there, and about 7 or 8 children, I don't remember, and they were walking like that, stopping every 10 steps or so and reciting, rain, 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 we want the rain. So, which is a confirmation that mantric effects can achieve things in the physical world. So, that is a karma kanda. Whereas the Gita and the Uttara Mimamsa, they are interested only in the knowledge aspect of the Vedas. Clear?
And then he speaks of the purva.
Yeah. Purva Mimamsa and Uttara Mimamsa. Purva Mimamsa is the first part, which is going to Karma Kanda.
Okay.
And Uttara Kanda is the later Mimamsa, which is going towards the knowledge aspect. So that's what he is describing here. Okay?
But if Mother wanted the rain and she got the rain,
Yeah.
and she was using karma kanda?
No. I mean, she used her own, her own mantra and her own power. But my point is that yes, it can give you results. In fact, there are mantras of all kinds. Even for recovering lost things, you can have mantra. But there is one thing very important which is stressed. The pronunciation must be perfect. And mantras can be there in any language. It can be there in
So
any...
they are not siddhis.
Pardon?
They are not siddhis that they get. Powers.
No. They just get the...
What they are asking.
Yeah, what they actually want.
Okay.
But may not be invariable rule. These are things which but you can get. We know that sound produces effects in the physical world. We know that, the power of sound. Okay, so we know that. So I go through and just point out the things. This is the background. Okay, so. But apart from the distinction between the Sankhya way is the path of knowledge. Okay, and the yoga way of works. The yoga of works was karma yoga. Sacrifice of all your actions to the divine and remembrance and offering to the divine all your actions. That's a karma yoga. So, of knowledge in the way of works, there was another and similar opposition in the Vedanta itself. And this also the Gita has to deal with to correct and fuse into its larger restatement of the Aryan spiritual culture. There are about, in Indian philosophy, there are about eight or 9 different philosophies, okay, of which Vedanta is one. Then there is the Mimamsa, then the Vishishta Advaita. Then there is also Vaisheshika. They are all different philosophies, okay, about 8 or 9 of them, including Buddhism. There is a, so Mimamsa is one of those. Nyaya is another philosophy. Nyaya is logic, mainly logic, dealing with logic. Okay, so these are there, and Mimamsa is one of them. But the Mimamsa has got 2 branches, that's what he's saying. One is going towards knowledge, one is going towards the acquisition of material things, and later on, subtler also, a permanent place in heaven. But these are lower levels. In the spiritual planes of consciousness, there are many, many levels. There is the Brahmaloka, Ananda Loka, okay, all sorts of lokas are there, worlds are there. Okay, so they get, in the lower worlds, they get a permanent seat if they want. That's what they want. Okay, so this was the distinction between Karma Kanda and Jnana Kanda. Karma Kanda is the Purva Mimamsa, where you do only sacrifices and your aim is to get, as I said, wealth, progeny, and success in the physical world. Okay? Whereas the Jnana Kanda is the knowledge aspect between the original thought that led to the philosophy of the Purva Mimamsa and the Vedavada, and that which led to the philosophy of the Uttara Mimamsa, the Brahmavada, getting the knowledge of the Brahman. Between those who dwelt in the tradition of the Vedic hymns and the Vedic sacrifice, and those who put these aside as a lower knowledge and laid stress on the lofty metaphysical knowledge which emerges from the Upanishads. Okay, so this is the distinction. So this distinction now, the Gita also has to deal with. It has to deal with Karma Kanda and Jnana Kanda, and it criticizes the Karma Kanda. So there is a suspicion sometimes that the Gita is criticizing the Vedas. But
it's only an aspect.
Yeah, the other lower aspect. But she is not, the Gita is not criticizing the lower aspect. She is only putting it in the right way, the Gita. Okay? So it is criticizing the attitude towards the Vedas, but not the. So, there are verses in the Gita which seem to criticize the Vedas. Who dwelt in the tradition of Vedic hymns and Vedic sacrifice. For the pragmatic mind of the Vedavadins are those who use the Karma Kanda and the sacrifice in the Vedic tradition and use mantras only for physical achievements, physical things. Okay?
There was no physical, no sacrifice of animals in the Vedas.
I'm not sure. Not in the Vedic period, maybe not. Okay? The sacrifices, I think that came on late, and in different traditions. In the Tantric tradition and maybe the other traditions, the animal sacrifice came in. But when the exact animal sacrifices started, I can't say. I'm not sure. I've not come across that in the study of Indian philosophy. It must have started later on. For the pragmatic mind of the Vedavadins, the Aryan religion of the rishis meant the strict performance of the Vedic sacrifices and the use of the sacred Vedic mantras in order to possess all human desires in the world, wealth, progeny, victory, every kind of good fortune, and the joys of immortality in a paradise beyond. So, you want immortality and you want to stay put in the higher planes of consciousness, where you are in peace and calm and happiness. But it's not the ultimate goal in many, okay? For the idealism of the Brahmavadins are those who want the knowledge of the Brahman, not the Vedic sacrifices. You can use the Vedic sacrifices, but not your aim should be different. Your aim should be that of knowledge and not acquisition of wealth and children and victory. Okay. For the idealism of the Brahmavadins, this was only a preliminary preparation, and the real object of man, the true purushartha. Purushartha is an Indian Sanskrit word meaning the true aim of being a human being. Okay? Purushartha began with his turning to the knowledge of the Brahman, which would give him the true immortality of an ineffable spiritual bliss far beyond the lower joys of this world or of any inferior heaven. So there are, even in the spiritual planes of consciousness, there are many layers. There are inferior heavens and there are also superior planes of consciousness. So Okay, so whatever may have been the true and original sense of the Veda, this was the distinction which had long established itself, with which, therefore, the Gita has to deal. And the Gita dealt with them, condemning the Vedavadins, the Karma Kanda, and siding with the Jnana Kanda. That's what the Gita does. Almost the first word of the synthesis of works and knowledge is a strong, almost a violent censure and repudiation of the Vedavada. This flowery word which they declare who has not clear discernment, devoted to the creed of the Veda, whose creed is that there is nothing else, souls of desire, seekers of paradise. It gives the fruits of the works of birth. It is multifarious with specialities of rights. It is directed to enjoyment and lordship as its goal. This is a quote from the English translation of Sri Aurobindo's translation of the Gita. In chapter 2, verse 42-43. This is the translation. Okay. The Gita even seems to go on to attack the Veda itself, which, though it has been practically cast aside, is still, to Indian sentiment, intangible, inviolable, the sacred origin and authority for all its philosophy and religion. Okay. The action of the three gunas is the subject matter of the Veda. This is again a quotation from the 45th verse. The action of the three gunas is the subject matter of the Veda. But do thou become free from the triple guna, O Arjuna? Okay. The triple guna is the sattva, rajas, tamas of the body, mind, life. Okay. The Vedas in the widest terms, all the Vedas, which might well include the Upanishads also, and seem to include them, for the general term Shruti is used later on, are declared to be unnecessary for the man who knows. Now there is a beautiful image. As much use as there is in a well with water in flood on every side, so much is there in all the Vedas for the Brahmins who has the knowledge. Okay. I'll finish the paragraph and we'll come back to it. It's a beautiful image. Nay, the scriptures are even a stumbling block for the letter of the word, perhaps because of its conflict of texts and its various and mutually dissentient interpretations, bewilders the understanding, which can only find certainty and concentration by the light within. Again a quote. When thy intelligence shall cross beyond the whirl of delusion, then shalt thou become indifferent to scripture, heard, or that which has yet to hear. Gantasi nirvedam shrotavyasya shrutasya cha pratipanna shrutasya cha. When thy intelligence, he is translating, when thy intelligence which is bewildered by the Shruti vipratipanna, shall stand unmoving and stable in samadhi, then shalt thou attain to yoga. So offensive is all this to conventional religious sentiment that attempts are naturally made by the convenient and indispensable human faculty of text twisting to put a different sense on some of these verses, but the meaning is plain and hangs together from the beginning to end. It is confirmed and emphasized by a subsequent passage in which the knowledge of the knower is described as passing beyond the range of Veda and Upanishads, Shabda Brahmati Vartate. So what it means, the burden of what he's saying here is that all sacred literature, all sacred literature, okay, Gita, Bible, okay, the Quran, all these are only representative truths. one need not be absolutely stuck on them. You have to go beyond to the real knowledge. So, this is and in India, this tradition is very much respected. I'll give you two examples. Whereas in the other religions, in Christianity as well as Islam, they swear by the Quran and they swear by the Bible. Okay, so whereas here in India it is not like that. I'll give you two examples. Okay, Vivekananda also some of the human nature is the same everywhere. So here also there are pundits who are very knowledgeable about the scriptures. They stick very much to the wordings of the scriptures. They don't go on to the experience. So there is one interesting incident in Vivekananda's life. Vivekananda was in Madras. He was touring all over and he came to Madras 1910 or something, or 1898 or something like that, 100 years ago. And one of the South Indian pundits told him, what you are saying doesn't agree with the scriptures. And he replied, but I, Vivekananda, say what I am saying and I stand by it. So here is someone who has the courage to say that you go with your scriptures, but I am saying what I am experienced. Experience is the crux, not the texts. If you get something which is beyond the text, fine. This is the first example. The other example is even more violent. Ramakrishna. Okay? So, someone challenged him again, a Pandit. Pandit is one who is very learned. Okay? But only learned in the mental way. So, he told Ramakrishna that what you are saying doesn't tally with the Vedanta. So, Ramakrishna's reply was, I spit upon your Vedanta. I don't care for your Vedanta. So, it shows that the tradition in India is experience, experience, experience. Don't get stuck in books. So that's what is being said here in this para. I give you, and Sri Aurobindo also insists all the time. In the Synthesis of Yoga, he has said very clearly that all sacred literature is only representations. It is never the whole truth. It cannot be it. When you are putting it into words, how can it capture the whole truth? So, it's a help, no doubt. All sacred literature is help. Okay? Scriptures, they are help, but we should not be limited by them.
But they can become a hindrance also.
Also, if you stick to the letter and not the spirit. That's right. Let us see, however, what all this means. For we may be sure that a synthetic and Catholic system like the Gitas will not treat such important parts of the Aryan culture in a spirit of mere negation and repudiation. The Gita has to synthesize the yoga doctrine of liberation by works and the Sankhya doctrine of the liberation by knowledge. It has to fuse karma with jnana, works with knowledge. It has at the same time to synthesize the purusha and prakriti idea common to Sankhya and yoga with the Brahmavada of the current Vedanta, in which the purusha, deva, Ishvara, supreme soul, God, Lord of the Upanishads, all became merged in the one all-swallowing concept of the immutable Brahman. And it has to bring out again from its overshadowing by that concept, but not with any denial of it, the yoga idea of the Lord or Ishvara. Okay. I'll read the whole para, we'll see what the details are. Yeah. It has too its own luminous thought to add. The crown of the synthetic system, the doctrine of the Purushottama and of the triple Purusha, for which, though the idea is there, no precise and indisputable authority can be easily found in the Upanishads, and which seems indeed at first sight to be in contradiction with that text of the Shruti where only two Purushas are recognized. Moreover, in synthesizing works and knowledge, it has to take account not only of the opposition of yoga and Sankhya, but of the opposition of works to knowledge in Vedanta itself, where the connotation of the two words and therefore their point of conflict is not quite the same as the point of the Sankhya Yoga opposition. All this is a philosophy and we'll have to clarify it. We can do that, it will take some time. It is not surprising at all, one may observe in passing, that with the conflict of so many philosophical schools, all founding themselves on the texts of the Veda and Upanishads, the Gita should describe the understanding as being perplexed and confused, led in different directions by the Shruti. Shruti Vipratipanna. What battles are even now delivered by Indian Pandits and metaphysicians over the meaning of the ancient texts and to what different conclusions they lead. The understanding may well get disgusted and indifferent. Gantasi nirvedam. Refuse to hear any more text, new or old, shrotavyasya shrutasya cha, and go into itself to discover the truth in the light of a deeper and inner and direct experience. So, I'll go through the text and we'll clarify whatever points are there to be clarified. So now Srimad is saying, it looks like the Gita is criticizing the Vedas. Is it really doing that? So he is now coming to explain that. Okay, so let us see, however, what all this means. For we may be sure that a synthetic and Catholic system like the Gita's will not treat such important parts of the Aryan culture in a spirit of mere negation and repudiation. I might as well mention here that Sri Aurobindo agrees fully that the Vedas are the foundation of Indian culture. They are the source of all her philosophy, all her way of thinking, all her way of living life. The Vedas.
So although it seems like they're being critical,
Yeah.
they're not really.
It's not really so. Because what Gita is criticizing is to stick to only the mantras and ask for benefit in the physical world. That is what it is criticizing. Okay, so the Gita has to synthesize the yoga doctrine of liberation by works. This is the karma jnana. Sorry, what am I talking? Karma yoga. Okay? Karma yoga. And what is karma yoga? Offering of all your works, all your emotions, all your thoughts to the divine. Whatever you are doing, you turn them to the divine. That's the karma yoga. And the Sankhya doctrine of liberation by knowledge. That is jnana yoga. You go through knowledge. And what is it? You go by discrimination and analysis and thinking. What is the right and what is the false? What is the truth and what is the false? Okay. So, vichara and viveka. Vichara is thinking and distinguishing between the right and the wrong. And viveka, discrimination. And vichara, thinking with the mind and distinguishing between the permanent and the temporal. That is the path of jnana yoga. Then slowly the mind gets full of light and understanding and escapes from the body-mind life and gets liberation. So the two ways are different. In the jnana yoga, when you are concentrating, the idea is don't do anything in the physical world. Don't engage yourself in the physical world. Avoid works because that will give you attachment and desire. And so it's done, and it's movement. What you want is the static condition of the liberation. So why do you want to engage in something which is the opposite of the real liberation, which is static? So don't engage in works. Whereas the Karma yoga is the opposite. Do works as a preparation and offer them to the divine, not for yourself. If you do it for yourself, you are an ordinary man. But if you do it for the Lord, slowly, your ego will disappear, your attachments will disappear, and you will get liberation.
So you will receive liberation, the same liberation.
Yes, the goal is the same,
Yeah.
but the true paths are different.
Yeah.
Okay. But there is another distinction which we should make. In the Jnana Yoga, your consciousness rises to the level of the spiritual planes of consciousness. But you are in the physical world, you have a body, you have a life, and you have a... So, your consciousness is bound to come down sometime or other into your body-mind life. Then you are back to square one. Then you are back to where you were with your attachments and your desires. You may remember the experience, but you are back to square one. All your defects will again appear. If you have attachments, it will give it. If you have got greed, it will appear. If you have got anger in you, it will appear again. So this is the Jnana Yoga. So they don't want to come back. They want to reject the physical world.
So when Vivekananda had anger,
Yeah.
he had to come, he
Yeah.
came down and then...
Yeah. So, yes, certainly. Certainly. He had anger, but that's why he is not an avatar. Vivekananda is a vibhuti. He is someone who has got a specific work to do. So these are, whereas in the Karma Yoga, you are all the time in the physical world and offering so the results of your liberation is permanent. It's not temporal. That's the difference. Okay, so the Gita has to synthesize the yoga doctrine of liberation by works and the Sankhya doctrine of liberation by knowledge. It has to fuse karma with jnana. It has at the same time to synthesize the purusha and prakriti idea common to Sankhya and yoga with the Brahmavada of the current Vedanta, in which purusha, deva, Ishvara, supreme soul, Lord, God, Lord of the Upanishads, all became merged in the one all-swallowing concept of the immutable Brahman. So, very clearly he is saying that the clear distinction in the Upanishads is not there as it is in the Gita. The Gita makes a very clear distinction between three levels. The first level is that of your ordinary life, okay, in which the psychic being is there, but it's a mutable. It is a Kshara Purusha. The Purusha, your consciousness which is evolving. The psychic being evolves. Then the Gita says you go to the next level, and that's the Akshara Purusha, the immutable, the witness self. You are just watching, you are not acting, no power, you are just watching and acting. That's the Akshara Purusha. But there is a third level. In the Akshara Purusha, your experience of the spiritual truth is impersonal. There is nobody there. You may have peace, you may have calm, you may have sense of infinity and release. You may even have touch of ananda or power. But nobody is there. The personal aspect of the divine is a third level. The Purushottama or the Ishvara of the... So, but in the Veda, in the Upanishads, they are saying all got swallowed up in the Brahman, the idea of the Brahman.
All got swallowed up.
Yeah. Not very clearly stated, as he is saying. Whereas in the Gita, is very clearly the three levels are stated. Okay? So that's what he is saying. The crown of its synthetic, it has two, its own luminous thought to add, the crown of its synthetic system, the doctrine of the Purushottama and of the triple Purusha. So, very clear distinction which is there in the Upanishads but not so clearly stated. Okay? That's what he's saying. So, and the doctrine of the Purushottama, The third level, the Purushottama is the aspect of the divine where personal aspect and impersonal aspect both are there. You can see God in the form you want to see Him, but you can also see Him as an impersonal force, impersonal consciousness.
A difficult question. Does Sri Aurobindo's essays on the Gita even transcend parts of the Gita or just explain them?
No, just explain. He doesn't. In fact, he goes later on and says, the Gita does not go on to the supermind.
Right.
It does not. It goes to the supermind, but does not talk of the next stage of evolution. The Purushottama level is the third level. You could say it is the same as the supermind. Ishvara and Purushottama are the same. But the idea that this plane of consciousness, supermind, can come down and take the evolution next step, that is not there in the Gita. And he says that perhaps it was not time for it. That's why. It would have been useless to talk about it because nobody would understand. That's why. And then there is that very beautiful explanation of that one who has a knowledge. Okay? He's saying a very interesting thing. When you are thirsty, a well is very useful to you. But when there is a flood, you don't need the well. So one who has got knowledge, a flood of knowledge, he doesn't need the scriptures. That's the image. The beautiful image. So the well is the scriptures. But when you are in a flood of knowledge, what do you need the scriptures? So the triple purusha, for which, though the idea is there, no precise and indisputable authority can be easily found in the Upanishads, and which seems indeed at first sight to be in contradiction with the text of the Shruti, where only two Purushas are recognized. Okay? And he has dealt with this earlier also, that there is the image of a tree and two birds are sitting. The one sitting below is the Kshara Purusha, the one who is eating the fruit of the tree and enjoying but also suffering. That's our normal human condition. But when the consciousness goes up, out of the body-mind life, that's the second bird, and he is not eating the fruit, and he is in calm and peace and just watching the lower bird. That's a witness self. So it's in contradiction of the Gita. The Gita is talking of 3 levels, and the Upanishads are talking of only 2 levels. So it seems to be contradictory, but it is actually not. There is a little confused language in the Upanishad. That's what Srila is saying. Okay? 2 Purusha recognized. Okay. Moreover, in synthesizing works and knowledge, it has to take account not only of the opposition of yoga and Sankhya, but the opposition of works to knowledge in Vedanta itself, where the connotation of the 2 words and therefore their point of conflict is not quite the same as the point of the Sankhya Yoga opposition. It is not surprising at all, one may observe in passing, that with the conflict of so many philosophical schools, all founding themselves on the text of the Veda and Upanishads, the Gita should describe the understanding as being perplexed and confused, led in different directions by the Shruti. Shruti is the sacred text which is heard. They are heard and written down. There is a tradition in India, the Vedas are not written by human beings. They are heard. There are 2 types of scriptures in India. One is heard and noted down, like in Sri Aurobindo, all his texts. They were just, it came out from there. It's not his writing. The knowledge is coming down and he's just writing down. Okay? But there is another one, Smriti. Shruti and Smriti. Smriti is remembered knowledge. When you go higher up, you realize that you always knew about it but you had forgotten. That is Smriti, remembrance. So these are the 2 types of scriptures in India. Shruti and Smriti. Okay? So that's what he's talking about. So, opposition of works with the contradiction of two words, and therefore the point of conflict is not quite the same. It is not surprising at all, one may observe in passing, that with the conflict of so many philosophical schools, all founding themselves on the text of the Veda and Upanishads, the Gita should describe the understanding as being perplexed and confused, led in different directions by the Shruti, Shruti Vipratipanna. What battles are even now delivered by Indian pundits and metaphysicians over the meaning of the ancient texts, and to what different conclusions they lead. I gave you two examples, Vivekananda and Ramakrishna. Okay, so
But this is an interesting sentence because he says, what battles are now?
yes,
Yeah.
that's right.
Yeah.
There are great, a lot of battles.
And they lead to different conclusions.
The understanding may well get disgusted and indifferent. Gantasi nirvedam. Okay, so refuse to hear any more texts, new or old. Shrotavyasa shrutasya cha. Whether you have heard or which you have to hear yet. Okay, all that, let it go to hell. Go into itself to discover the truth in the light of a deeper and inner and direct experience. So, and the Gita makes a very clear understanding of the synthesis between these two. The Mimamsa, the Jnana Yoga, or what he's calling the Sankhya doctrine, they said don't do any work. Okay, don't do any physical work. The other one is do works as is sacrifice. So it makes a very clear difference that both are the same. And he explains out, if you give up the physical works, it's not possible to give up all physical works. You have to eat and you have to sleep. So it's not possible. But it does help. It does help. But the other one, if you give up in the mind, the attachment to anything, okay, tackle it in the psychological field, you are not attached to anything, then it doesn't matter if you work. So, suppose I am attached to eating sweets. I'll give a very simple example. I am attached to sweets eating in the physical world. So, I decide I want to get rid of it, I give it up. It helps. It does help. Okay? You may get rid of it or you may not. But there is another method which is better. Get rid of the attachment in your mind and vital. Get rid of the attachment there. Become absolutely unattached. Then, whether you eat or not is immaterial. So that's a karma yoga. Do the works but don't be attached.
We had a nice evening the other day, morning the other day, in the Mother's Flower Garden. And Alok also spoke. And he talked about the fellow who said, it's very easy to give up smoking. I give it up every night.
That was okay, we stop here?
Yes. Namaste all. And tomorrow we will have Savitri.